The last time the internet changed, it gave us social media. This time, it's giving us something far more intimate. OpenAI just launched Atlas, a browser powered by ChatGPT that lets you talk to the web. No clicks, no tabs, no searches, just conversation. And it's not alone. Tools like Comet and Perplexity are building what's next. AI browsers and agents that think with us, reason for us, and soon act on our behalf. It's a really big shift. And I talked about this a little bit last week, this idea of going from clicks to conversations, from using technology to really collaborating with it on a much deeper level. And I've been thinking about that, especially because of how many posts I've been seeing on LinkedIn where people are like, oh no, now we need to start redesigning assessment, as if we didn't know that this moment was coming all along. And as AI takes on more of the qualities that previously were only associated with humans, as it becomes more personal, one of the biggest questions I've been seeing circulating online is who's responsible for how it behaves? The company that builds it, the people who use it, or the culture that keeps pretending that this future is still optional? One of the things I always tell people is I feel like AI is such an unforgiving technology. When I think back to people who deployed iPads and Chromebooks over different years, it honestly sometimes in some ways was more beneficial to deploy a little bit later when the MDM and many other sort of like deployment issues were resolved. But with AI, things just feel so different. It's not waiting for you to catch up. And every single moment now that I see people holding on to the past is a moment that is stolen from your future, especially for our young people who are walking into that future today.
How do you navigate change? It's a question we think about often, and one that today's world expects us to be comfortable with. The challenge, however, is where do you begin? And how do you develop the mindset and skills to be successful? You're listening to Designing Schools, and I'm your host, Dr. Sabba Quidwai, educator, researcher, and storyteller. Join me each week for stories and strategies that bridge the gap between research and practice, as together we explore how might we design schools.
Now, this week, when I saw the announcement from OpenAI that they're ready to loosen the restrictions a little on ChatGPT, that they've mitigated the serious mental health issues and are now moving toward personalization expression, even something like treat adults like adults, that tweet by Sam Altman triggered a really big online debate. And now, if you remember back when ChatGPT 5 was released, one of the big changes that happened was 4.0 was taken away. There was like one model, and it was a model that didn't have as much personality as, say, 4.0 did. And if you were kind of following along, or even now, if you just Google, ChatGPT 4.0 taken away, you'll remember that people were angry. In fact, I think if there's one way to summarize it, it was sort of this idea like, give me my friend back. People did not appreciate ChatGPT 5's advanced reasoning and thinking and less personality. They wanted that friendly chatbot that they had gotten very used to. And so when Sam Altman actually shared that tweet online that, okay, we're bringing it back, we're going to treat adults like adults, it really triggered this big online debate. I imagine some people were really happy if you were one of those people who was like, give me my friend back. And then there were people who were like really alarmed, like, oh my God, this is awful. I'm leaving ChatGPT and whatnot. And when I see things like that, my first thought isn't so much like, what should we do? But it's more, how did we get here in the first place where we have so many people who want to be friends with a chatbot? Because it really comes down to sort of like this idea then about freedom. Should people just be allowed to do whatever they want? And one of the things Sam Altman said was in response to some of the backlash he was getting is, we are not the moral police of the world. And it just sort of brings back this idea of freedom and individualization. And is there a line that you cross when you allow people to do some things, even if it's not really harming anybody else, over, hey, as a company, you shouldn't open that door to begin with? And so that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit today, because I felt like the context was missing a lot from the conversation. Like people were very quick to judge and have reactions, as they always are. But one of the things that it reminded me of and made me look into a little bit more, because I'd actually never really looked into this, I don't have heard about it online, and that's the story of OnlyFans. Now, as I was reading about it, OnlyFans launched in 2016. It was founded by a guy called Tim Stokely. Now, initially, it was positioned as subscription platform for creators. Whereas like on Instagram and other platforms, you were giving everything away for free. And some of you might even remember the platform Patreon. There were a couple of them that were emerging where it was like, okay, if you want to, sort of like what Substack is today, where it was like, okay, if some of you as creators want to come on and get subscription only content, if you're a fitness coach, a chef, an artist, this is like a direct monetization model for you. However, by 2017, one of the things that they had found was that there were a lot of adult creators who were jumping on the platform. And when they first started, they had a ban on explicit content. And in 2017, they removed that ban because, again, they started to see, like, whoa, there's all these adult creators who have found like a niche here that on public platform, that was kind of content that you weren't able to share publicly. And one of the things that happened to OnlyFans is during the pandemic, their growth exploded. It was like you had more people at home, more people looking for entertainment. And what I thought was so interesting about the story of OnlyFans is that it was really the users who steered the identity of the platform. So it was like the company had built this infrastructure, they had built this vision for like, hey, creators, like on Instagram and other platforms, you're not getting paid. Like here, you can get paid. But like, clearly the visions were like very different. And so over time, it was the users who really shaped what OnlyFans today has become. So even though it started to create a platform and it didn't have as many rules, like I said, you could post videos, tutorials, art, like whatever it is that you wanted, and your fans could pay for access. Like no middleman. And so I think it's just so interesting that you had these like sex workers, these adult performers, and these digital creators as well, who like on other platforms, they had either been banned or censored. They were like, damn, on OnlyFans, like we can actually like work safely. We can post what we want. We can control our content, our pricing, our audience. And it was more of a gated community. And that is really what changed the platform's identity. Like today, when you say OnlyFans, I think that it's not like a chef giving away their recipes that comes to mind. But I go back to that is not what OnlyFans planned to become. Like when they started, that was not the vision upon which they built the company. It became what it did because that is what users wanted from it and what users were using it for. And so, like I said, the company built the infrastructure, but it was the behavior of people that ultimately built the brand. Like, here's where it gets really interesting as well. Like I was reading in 2021, OnlyFans announces that it's going to sexually explicit content altogether, trying to actually return to their original mission. The parallels to this and OpenAI and ChatGPT are just as crazy. And within 6 days, they had to reverse the decision. Exactly what happened to Sam Altman with 4.0 when he tried to go to 5 and then backtrack because the users just lost it. And they said the backlash was like massive. Creators, customers, advocates, like pretty much everyone who had made the platform successful was basically like, get it back to what it was because that was what we were using it for. That moment when they made that decision to reverse back that vision and be like, okay, fine, we give in, use it for what you want then. It was such a turning point because it showed that on the internet today, users don't just shape products, they govern them. They decide the direction, they decide the culture. And one of the reasons I bring up OnlyFans is not just for the content, but for this pattern. It's almost like I remember reading that ChatGPT story, and even though I didn't know a lot about OnlyFans, I don't know why that just like came into my mind. I was like, oh, how did they come to be that kind of platform? And so I just want to say, I think it's really crazy right now how you have so many smart people posting really ridiculous, almost like it's like, are you even living in today's world? So when I see people get angry at OpenAI and get angry at Sam Altman and like, what are you doing? And this is risking our young people, you do realize this is not the first time this is happening. Like, it's great that now all of a sudden you've decided to pay attention to culture and society, but like blaming Sam Altman is not only just a losing battle, but it's going to do nothing to address the culture we've created where this is what people seek out online. That's not what we're here to debate today. This is not something that Sam Altman put on the table and something he started. This is something that has been an ongoing part of our culture ever since the beginnings of social media. But I think it speaks to a much deeper human condition where I just think we have to ask, why do people want to do these things online? Do we care that they do these things online? Should we care? Are we even in a position to judge other people? Because I think it's very strange that people think they can do it in some areas, but not in all. And so OpenAI can talk about treating adults like adults, but it's like once you give people the power to personalize, create personas, and build relationships with these systems, the platform doesn't just belong to the company anymore. It belongs to the culture of the society within which it lives. And I think that's what we have to pay attention to right now because this next wave of AI is only going to take us deeper and deeper into this relationship between browsers, agents, reasoning models. This is not about just writing a faster email or having an AI tool go off and complete a course for you. This is not just co creation of content, this is co creation of how we are going to live and interact, not just with these tools, but with each other as well. Because this is probably like a topic for a whole other conversation. But I recently joined a dating app for the very first time. And I have to tell you, it is a toxic, toxic, toxic culture. And I'm so glad I did it because I feel like it has given me a very different perspective. So when I see stories like the ones that emerged here, I think maybe this is one of the reasons my mind went in that direction was because there are no norms and values. There are no rules. It's like a free for all for how people want to treat each other. Oh, yeah, I'm going to talk to multiple people. Oh, yeah, no, I don't do that. Oh, you do this. Oh, that's great. It's like there's no shared norms and values. And I think just overall in society, that is really probably the big gaping hole. We don't have shared values. It's just this individualized sort of space, free for all. Everyone do what you want. Oh, but if I don't like what you want, I'm going to speak out loud because oh, it's okay for you to do this, but it's not okay for you to do this. And it's okay, who is making up the rules here? So, yes, maybe did OpenAI deserve a little bit of scrutiny for kind of like opening a door? Maybe, but I do think that before we start pointing fingers, we all need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and be like, you know what? We need to be honest because every single adult right now has played a role in designing and shaping this moment from the way we use these tools, from the questions we did or didn't ask, and really honestly from how complacent and negligent we've been in many ways, especially with our young people over the last 2 decades. So it's sort of like that idea that we want innovation, we want to be part of the conversation, we want to talk about AI, but when it gets to the hard conversations, we almost just want to pass along the blame. And so responsibility is not like a button that you turn on or off. It's a skill and it's something we have to practice, not just, in classrooms, but really in all aspects of our society. And I think really this is where so many people are getting it wrong in this moment, trying to ban things, protect, control, my favorite monitor, that's just not how you help people navigate their world. I think we need to get more comfortable sitting in the messiness of problems. And I think that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. We want to judge somebody, we want to blame somebody, we want somebody else to take accountability. We're looking towards everybody else instead of internally within ourselves and asking, what was my role in how we got to where we are here today? And so, again, I think we just need sort of like all people, all ages, and coming together, being able to sit in this gray space, hold tension, and really just reflect on like, how did we get here? What is happening in the world that we're living in right now? And more importantly, what do we want to design moving forward? And I think that's the real leadership work of today. And that's the real work of learning, taking time, like I said, like I went back and I was like, yeah, I need to learn more about OnlyFans. Like, how did that come to me? Why did I think about that right away when I saw that story? So, in today's episode, I really want to talk about what that looks like and what happens when schools and all of us sort of go down this path of compliance over like building capacity in people and how these choices that we've been making over the last few years are really just shaping a generation now that's growing up with AI, but not growing with it with intentionality through making decisions collectively. So let's go ahead and talk about one of the first things is obviously we can talk about OpenAI and tech companies all day, but the truth is, I see many of the same patterns really show up in education. We try to manage risk by writing new rules, really instead of just helping people build the new skills they need. We react to technology instead of reimagining our culture, our habits, the ways we work, the way we learn, the way we communicate. And I think the thing is now this is starting to have a really negative impact on students. And there were a couple reports that I want to talk about this week. One of them is Oxford University Press. They did a really big report called Teaching the AI Native Generation, which, by the way, can I just say, I am not a fan of this term AI native. It's like literally, why are we not learning? Before it was the digital native, now it's the AI native. And it's just a very misleading title. Anyways, they survey about 2,000 students across the UK. And what kind of really stood out to me was, as always, how self aware and articulate these young people are. 8 out of 10 said they already use AI for schoolwork, but less than half of them said they feel confident being able to tell if AI content is actually true. And the same group, about the same number of kids, also said they don't feel like their teachers feel confident using AI either. So it's like we have this huge gap. Like, this is the first time I think people have more access, but that literacy gap, how are you supposed to use it? How do you make decisions? How do you trust it? All these pieces. It's almost like we've just, again, completely left people alone to just fend for themselves. And then when they're isolated and they make the wrong decisions, and we have this culture built on bad habits and bad decisions or lack thereof, we complain and want to blame somebody else. It was kind of sad. There was a one student in the report who said, AI helps me get answers faster, but I feel like it makes it too easy and I'm not challenging myself anymore. And that's kind of the sort of moment that we're in where, mistaking convenience for comprehension. And I think one of the sad things that's happening in this moment as well is the definition of what it means to challenge yourself is very different today than what it was yesterday. So it's almost like they're taking yesterday's systems, having to use today's technology, and then blaming themselves now and feeling guilty when the two don't line up. And I think this is a very, very dangerous path that we're going down. And it's understandable. Our schools are under a lot of pressure. I always kind of tell people by no means is this work easy. People like want safety, parents want assurance. It's like everybody wants answers. And the hard part is there's not a lot of answers right now. And that's why I go back to I think we have to be able to figure out how do we get comfortable sitting in that messiness? How do we get comfortable just being in a space of questions and not answers? Because I think that's really what this moment is asking of us. And I think one of the ways in which we're going to start to move in this direction in a more meaningful way is by just ending the debate. Like, I think at this point, it's so funny. We just are working on an AI guidance for an organization. And obviously, there's one line in there, we will not use AI detectors. And of course, there's one person who just lost it. And I think we're just at this point now where, like, you just can't entertain these conversations anymore. I mean, there's a point, yes, let's make people feel safe. Like, yes, let's help them overcome their fears. But at some point, enough is enough. And at some point, you have to realize me sitting here entertaining your fears and all of your things when you're not even willing as an adult to go out and do the research and figure things out on your own is literally now costing young people. But like I said, every single moment that we now spend in this debate is a moment that you are losing from the future. And if it's not just your future, it's the future of the kids that we are responsible for. And so I do think it was funny this week watching a lot of people see like Atlas or Comet from Perplexity, these AI agents on these browsers, like, oh, I had it run through my Coursera course and it's doing this. And OpenAI, you should make this a guardrail and you shouldn't allow it to take quizzes. This is just so absolutely ridiculous. But I thought what was more ridiculous was how many people were like, oh my gosh, I think the moment has now come where we have to redesign our assessments. And I was like, you know what? This is what it took for you to be like, now I need to redesign my assessments. I was like, that is literally the problem space you need to sit in and you need to ask yourself, why was this moment the moment you felt like you needed to redesign your assessments? Why in the past 3 years have you not made that choice? And I think that answer is pretty self-evident. And so not paying attention now is not being neutral. It's literally neglect. Like it's literally, I think, really unethical. It's like we have this moral responsibility. If you choose to be in a profession and to really be in a space where you are working with young people, I think to some degree there is a moral responsibility to help them understand how to work with this technology, how to question it, how to challenge it, how to use it to amplify their thinking, to look at what new opportunities are going to be available to them. What does the world of work look like for you? What does life look like for you? And not even what does it look like? What do you want it to look like? Because, I really always appreciate how Mustafa Suleiman says, in a decade, the train will have left the station. But like right now in this moment, we do get to decide and we do get to shape what happens next. So if we agree that banning is not the answer, then the question becomes, what is? How do we help people, especially educators and young people, learn to think with AI instead of against it? And, if you have been to any of my keynotes or any of my workshops, I always come back to this idea of having an AI mindset, right? AI is not a tool, it's your teammate. We have a hard time figuring these things out. We are very, from a mindset perspective, like overwhelmed with the constraints that we see around us. We have a hard time seeing beyond those constraints, but our AI tools don't. So why not partner together to do what individually we have a hard time doing? And one of the ways in which I recommend doing this is my Spark prompting framework. I always say like Spark is like this empathy interview, right? It's a way to pause and really frame your thinking. You can use it with or without an AI tool, but Spark is like what I call like this AI mindset, right? It's an empathy interview and it goes through a couple of things: situation, problem, aspiration, result. And K is for Kismet, which your AI tool is going to do. So, for example, you start with a situation. What's happening? What's your role? What's going on? Then you define the problem. What is the tension or the gap that we're actually trying to solve? Then we go into the aspiration. What would good look like for you? Like if everything went well, what would that look like? And then result. What is one thing you would want to see to make you feel like, wow, this is what good looks like. And yes, I feel like my problem is being solved. And that's it. As the human, that is your job, is to frame that up. And then you go in with Kismet to your AI tool and say, hey, give me 3 to 4 ways in which I could achieve this. And when people see those responses that come in, again, those constraints that we couldn't see beyond, the AI tool didn't care. It's not going to be like, oh, but you don't have this. Oh, but you don't have that. Oh, but with system this and the system that. No, it's just going to start generating idea after idea after idea. And in that space, we're not outsourcing our creativity. We're not outsourcing our thinking. If anything, we have to spend time critically thinking about the problem we were trying to solve, about the idea we wanted to implement. And it's really that partnership, using AI as that teammate to be able to begin with empathy and be able to design what's next from there. And I think when people start to think of AI in this way and they start to use AI in this way, that fear begins to go away. They begin to see possibility, and it helps people become more optimistic about, one, problems they can solve, but number two, ideas they can implement. So this brings me to the next topic, which, like I said, building on that, is like, now that we're starting to make these choices, I think we're starting to see some really negative effects from our choices. So there was a report that came out from the Center for Democracy and Technology called Hand in Hand, Schools' Embrace of AI is Connected to Increased Risk for Students. And I want to say, I think a lot of these risks now are not because of AI at all. In many ways, it's actually because we've neglected to address the technology. We're now seeing, like I said earlier, it's like this new technology, these old systems, and this horrible clash of what happens when the two collide. And this report does a good job of, I think, highlighting a lot of these. So they surveyed about 1,000 students, about 800 teachers, and 1,000 parents across the US between June and August of this year. And here are a couple of the things they found. First of all, AI adoption in schools, they said, has pretty much exploded. 85% of teachers say they've used AI in some way in the past year, and 86% of students said the same. But the guidance and training around it have not even remotely kept pace. And that's the gap, I think, that's leading to us seeing a lot of these negative results now. There's a huge gap between using AI and understanding how to use AI. And that has now literally become a risk in our schools. The report highlights that students are using AI to talk, to think, and to feel. Over 2/3 said they've had back and forth conversations with AI tools. And for students with disabilities, that number jumps even higher. Now, on the surface, that might sound great, right? Access, inclusion, independence, like you're getting help and support. But here's the tension. Those same students are more likely to say they feel less connected to their teachers, and they're worried that AI might treat them unfairly or expose them to extreme content. So we have this like really strange contradiction. AI is helping students communicate, but it's very quietly also eroding trust, not just between the tools, but between people as well. Parents also said, or were part of the study, they said their biggest fears were not about grades or cheating. They were worried about relationships and development. Over 60% were worried that AI is weakening their child's ability to build empathy, resolve conflict, and think critically. That's not a homework issue. That is a humanity issue. And the report also found something that I thought was really interesting. They said the more a school uses AI, the more likely students, parents, and teachers are to say they're concerned about privacy, fairness, and emotional safety. And I think, again, people are seeing this huge gap between how it's being used alongside an older system that is not being redesigned, and how, even though you have this amazing technology, it's not showing people the amazing results because we're not doing that spark empathy work to be able to redesign the system in which it's being used. In many ways, it's not AI that's the problem. Again, it goes back to the system, the culture, and the people within it who are not willing to sit in that messy problem space. You cannot, I think, if there's one thing this report makes clear, it's really hard to take a new technology, plug it into an old system, and then expect that you're going to get good results. And that, I think, is the real risk that we are facing here. And this has actually been a really big topic in many of my keynotes lately. I've been sharing, what are the 5 things you should be doing by the end of 2025 to be able to really prepare for 2026 and what comes next. And, I'll share just a couple of you with you. I'm getting ready to do a proper Substack on this. Stay tuned for that. And if you're not subscribed, I'll drop a link to it below. But, there's a report that came out by Atlassian. I think I talked about it either last week or the week before, which was like 95% of people are not seeing results that they want to see with AI tools. And Atlassian were like, okay, well, forget the 95%, we're going to focus on the 5% and look at what they're doing. And a lot of the work that we've been doing with partners and schools and districts that I've been working with really aligns to what Atlassian says. And I always say I'm like so lucky to work literally with the top 5-10% of people. I get to work with incredible leaders who just are ambitious, they're bold, they're willing to make those hard choices, they're willing to sit in the problem space, not just for one session, but really, for many, many, many months as they help their teams navigate this transition. And there's a couple of just highlights. Again, I shared in the other ones, I'll share in the Substack, but I'll just share it here as we close out this episode. And that is like these people recognize that AI is not just an app to deploy or an app to update or a tool to try to help you write your email faster. These leaders really recognize this is a fundamental system change that we're moving through. It's hard, and it's messy, and it's not one that's going to be solved like a 3-hour workshop or something along those lines. The second thing we really say that these people do is, they recognize AI is not a tool, it's a teammate. So because of that, they recognize they need to redesign the type of work that is happening. And because they recognize those things, they also know that everyone needs a learning plan that allows them to come together with people to learn, to grow, to share, to sit in that problem space consistently on a regular basis. And if you haven't seen the program that we've been doing and launching, we work with organizations and teams to do this. It's called the AI Power Circle. We really encourage people to build a power circle inside your organization where you have people across different departments coming together to talk, to share, to really just allow themselves a safe space to be able to sit in this problem space. Because, these reports are a reminder of the danger now. Like we think we're avoiding something. We think we're doing something good when we say, oh, we're not going to use AI and we're going back to our blue books and all of this other kind of stuff. But I think now we're seeing the real risk is you have this old system, you have this new technology, and when they clash together, we are harming people more than we are helping them. So as we move forward, hopefully into this, close of 2025, beginning of 2026, we're going to see AI become more personal, more present, more persuasive. The real question isn't who's responsible or let's blame a company and one person has to be responsible for it all. It's collectively, how are we holding ourselves accountable in this moment, not just for what we design next, but also for the choices we've made that have led us to where we are today. As always, thank you for listening. If you have any questions or any articles or topics you want me to cover, feel free to send them my way, and I'll see you next week.
It's your turn to join the conversation by sharing what you enjoyed or what questions you have. In a world where time and attention are so valuable, thank you for choosing to listen and for being a part of our Designing Schools community. Leaving a review for the podcast helps others learn about the show, giving them the gift of knowledge and allowing this community to help create access and exposure to ideas and opportunities others may not even know exist.